Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome back to Try or Die Garage. The intention of the video today is basically to carry on with the rear wheel and to carry on where I left off. So if you've been watching, you'll know I've been through various combinations of wheel, hub slash sprocket carrier and sprocket, trying to get the wheel to line up. So just a brief recap. The original GSX wheel is obviously very narrow, so I want to put a wider 4.5 inch wheel in, so I've got a bandit wheel. Tried to fit the bandit wheel with the bandit hub and the bandit sprocket, and the bandit hub is too wide, so it pushes the wheel right over and the sprocket rubs on the swing arm. The forums said that a GS500 wheel hub will work in the bandit wheel, so I got a GS500 hub which comes with a 520 sprocket. Tried that, and the GS500 hub is too shallow for the bandit wheel, so the chain, when mounted, rubs along the edge of the wheel. So basically the option that I was going to go with was to essentially take the hub slash sprocket carrier from the bandit and trim it down by about 10mm. And the last video, that's where we kind of left off. But I've been thinking about things, and I said in the last video I didn't want to use a machine shop. I wanted to do everything on this bike in the garage with the tools I've got, and I don't have a lot of tools. You've seen, if you watched the previous video of the garage, I've got fuck all basically, but I've always managed, and ideally that's what I want to continue to do, because I want to produce some content that anybody like me can look at it and think, okay, well, I've got an angle grinder, I've got a bench grinder, I've got a drill and a socket set, and I can do what he's done. So today I think I might have come up with a solution, and basically the idea that I've sort of come up with is I'm going to use the GS500 hub, and I'm going to turn this bandit sprocket into a spacer. So basically I am going to cut around here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the other sprocket that I bought, the smaller sprocket, onto the hub. Now my biggest concern with doing that is the sprocket as it sits is a hub centric sprocket, so it actually sits over the hub, so that the forces, the shear forces and the pulling forces on the rear sprocket, a lot of that pressure is, and those forces are absorbed by the hub itself. If you space a sprocket out, it will push it proud of the hub center, which means that the only thing taking all the force from the sprocket is going to be the bolts and the nuts. For what it's worth, I have asked people on the forums, and some people are like, oh, just throw some washers in and space it out that way, do it this way, do it that way. And I don't really want to do it that way. So the sprocket itself will make a really good spacer. So that's the plan today. I'm going to put the GS500 hub back in the wheel, but first I'm going to turn the sprocket into a spacer, and I'm going to do that just basically using an angle grinder. So basically, one sprocket spacer. What I'm going to do now is, yeah, just put the other sprocket on. I'm going to be using the bolts from, so I'm going to be using GS hub, which is that. But obviously if I put another sprocket on here, those bolts are going to be too short. But because the Bandit hub is so deep, I'm going to use the Bandit bolts. And let's see how that works out. Right, let's go and put it on the wheel, put it in the bike and see what happens. Right, let's see if this works. So the chain clears the wheel, not by much, probably 2 or 3 mil. Let me try and get the camera in there so you can have a look. You can see there is just about enough room, but the chain is dead on, so the wheel fits, yeah, so let's see if we can get the spacers in. So the wheel is in. I have the spacer and the rear brake on this side. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, but the disc is centered in the rear brake. The only thing I would say is the wheel is slightly over to the right by about 2 or 3 mil, but there is chain clearance which you can just about see, so there we go. So I'm going to take that as success. The only thing I need to do now is to trim down the spacer that I have for the hub bearing. So on the right hand side, the bearing is the same size as the axle. On the left hand side, the spacer is also the bearing support for the hub, So the hub bearing is a lot larger than the axle. So I'll show you. So basically that's what it looks like. This bit there goes over the axle, supports the hub bearing, and then this sits up against the swing arm on the left hand side, like that, sort of like that. But it's too long, so I need to figure out how too long and then go from there. So back to the spacer. I have two hub-centric spacers. This is off the original GSX, and that came with the Bandit wheel. Both of them work with the hub bearing in the GS 500 hub slash sprocket carrier. Regardless of which one I decide to use, ultimately one of them needs to be trimmed down. I think I probably need to trim it down by at least 15 mil. One is slightly longer, but basically I have 10 mil on the sprocket side of the hub and the swing arm, so I'm going to need to chop this one down or that one down. I was going to include it in this video fitting the rear wheel, but I think it probably deserves a video all of its own. And also I've already got close to an hour of footage or 2 hours of footage on sorting out the rear wheel problem. So I'm going to leave it for now, leave this video for now. As always, like, share and subscribe. Even if you hate what I'm doing, send it to your mates so you can have a laugh. Good comments, bad comments, YouTube doesn't care. The more people comment on the video, the more it's going to boost it. So yeah, whatever you feel like doing. If you fucking hate it, tell me. If you like it, tell me. If you've got some constructive criticism or some advice, always welcome. But otherwise, thanks for watching.